It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the Prime Minister welcomes Volodymyr Zelensky's peace offering to Donald Trump. The Ukrainian president has described the now infamous Oval Office meeting as regrettable and says he's ready to work under President Trump's leadership. Sir Keir Starmer has hailed Zelensky's commitment to securing peace. Meanwhile, the US Vice President J.D. Vance has rejected claims that he was insulting British troops when he made disparaging remarks about European countries and their ability to fight a war. One former British minister has called him a clown. Also tonight, a teenager shot dead in South London. The 16-year-old boy was pronounced dead at the scene near Stockwell Tube Station this afternoon. No arrests have been made. We'll have the latest for you. Plus, the UK's obesity crisis, the new study that suggests 3 out of 4 Brits will be obese by 2050. And with love, Meghan. We'll find out what the critics have made of the Duchess of Sussex's new lifestyle series, which landed on Netflix today. All that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed Volodymyr Zelensky's commitment to peace after the Ukrainian president offered an olive branch to President Trump. Mr. Zelensky saying today that last week's disastrous meeting at the White House didn't go the way it was supposed to, and he's ready to work under President Trump's leadership. Those comments coming after the United States paused military aid to Ukraine, a move that has been welcomed by Russia. Meanwhile, the US Vice President J.D. Vance has rejected claims that he insulted British troops when he made disparaging remarks about European countries' ability to fight a war, leading one former minister to call him a clown. Our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes has the latest.
Ukrainian troops on the front line with American-supplied weapons. Vital support to combat Russia's war. It's why a decision by Donald Trump to pause all military aid following a bust-up with Ukraine's president has sent shockwaves across the country and perhaps prompted Volodymyr Zelensky to offer an olive branch.
Дорогі українці, українки.
We seek constructive cooperation, a relationship built on trust. What's happened at the White House instead of our planned negotiations is regrettable. But we must find the strength to move forward, to respect one another, as we have always respected America, Europe and all our partners, and to work together towards peace.
The president also used a post on social media to say, "We're ready to work fast to end the war, and the first stages could be the release of prisoners and a truce in the sky, a ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and a truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same." In Kyiv, the Prime Minister hoping diplomacy will diffuse the drama with Washington.
Given that Donald Trump has said that he is pausing military aid to Ukraine, can you just explain what that means in reality for Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the front line, for Ukrainian air defenders protecting Ukraine's cities? Will Ukrainians die because of this decision?
We are ready to sign the prepared agreement on the establishment of the investment fund in order to begin cooperation with the United States on a fully pragmatic and economic basis. This agreement has been approved by the government of Ukraine, and we are ready at any moment to start working with the United States by signing this agreement and further developing our economic cooperation.
Speaking before Mr. Zelensky's public remarks, the US Vice President said Ukraine must be ready to negotiate peace.
We need the Ukrainians privately to come to us and say, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is how we're going to participate in the process to end this conflict. That is the most important thing, and that lack of private engagement is what is most concerning to us.
Unclear how Russia will react to Ukraine's proposed partial truce. Unsurprisingly, though, Moscow welcomed any halt in American military support. A very different mood on the streets of Kyiv.
Ukraine's government clearly believes it can still make a deal with Donald Trump, switch back on that military support and go some way towards rebuilding ties. But trust has fundamentally broken down amongst ordinary people who question whether America is still on their side.
You know that America is one of the biggest allies from the beginning of this war. And right now it feels like we are stopped in our back. And yep, I think it's some kind of tragedy.
Overall situation is disturbing because, well, the most disturbing thing is that it sounds very unfair because, you know, we are victims.
Yet still standing strong, despite this new era of even greater uncertainty. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
Let's bring in Sky's political correspondent Sarina Barker Singh, who joins us now from Westminster. And Sarina, let's first start by talking about Sir Keir Starmer trying to keep the UK front and centre in this peace movement.
Yes, exactly. We know that he spoke to Donald Trump last night, as well as 2 calls over the weekend. And we understand that it was earlier in the evening that he spoke to Donald Trump before those reports came out of the US that the US had suspended its aid to Ukraine. Now, Number 10 wouldn't say specifically whether Keir Starmer had raised the issue of aid and whether he was trying to convince Donald Trump not to pull aid. What they did say is that they engage with the US at all levels, and we know that Keir Starmer told his cabinet this morning that the US was an indispensable ally and they wanted to work with the US to bring out a lasting and durable peace with this coalition of the willing that needs to have US backing. So the message from Downing Street really is nothing has changed. But yesterday in Parliament, when Sir Keir Starmer was updating MPs on his trip, he was asked specifically about whether the US was thinking about pulling US aid. He was asked this by the SNP's Stephen Flynn. And he said he did not believe that was the US's position. So whether the UK was blindsided, we still don't know. Downing Street just wouldn't get into that. They said there's constant engagement with the US at every level. There's been another development as well. Keir Starmer did pick up the phone to President Zelenskyy today. They said reiterating a joint goal for peace. But as you say, a reminder that Keir Starmer has placed himself since the weekend right at the centre of this global discussion, really, on Ukraine's future since that White House debacle between Trump and Zelenskyy, and just proving what a delicate balancing act this has now become between the two presidents.
Can we talk about the US Vice President as well, J.D. Vance, because he created a bit of anger over some comments he made about European troops, British troops. Has he clarified or backtracked on those? What's he said?
Well, this was an interview he did with Fox News last night, and he was talking about the prospect of peacekeepers being sent to police the border in case or in the event that a ceasefire deal needed to be brokered. What he did say was that the US, the only US guarantee would be this minerals deals. But then he also described peacekeeping troops as some 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. Now, this was taken as a slight against British troops and French forces, which led to a backlash from across the political spectrum because of the sacrifices, of course, that British troops have made alongside the US. So J.D. Vance did take to Twitter. He said that he nowhere in the clip mentioned British or French forces by name. He says it wasn't the UK he was referring to, and he did say that UK troops had fought bravely. But France and the UK are the only countries who have publicly committed to peacekeeping troops on the ground. Keir Starmer very publicly. So it's not clear who J.D. Vance was speaking about if he says it wasn't these two countries. Plenty of calls for J.D. Vance to apologise. He said he was simply misunderstood.
OK, Sarina, thank you. Sarina Barker Singh there with the latest from Westminster. Well, President Trump will be addressing both houses of Congress tonight, the biggest speech of his second term so far. We'll bring that to you live here on Sky News from 2 o'clock this morning. Now, a 16-year-old boy has been shot dead in South London today. Sky's Emma Birchley is in the studio with me for more details on this. And this happened earlier this afternoon. What do we know, Emma?
Well, police were called at around 2:30 this afternoon to Paradise Road. It's very close to Stockwell Tube Station in South London. An air ambulance landed at a nearby park and attempts were made to save his life, but sadly he was pronounced dead at the scene. A crime scene was set up. The police tape we're so familiar with, a tent was erected at the scene. And police are now gathering CCTV. They're talking to witnesses and they're trying to piece together exactly what happened. They say they will work around the clock to do that. As it stands at the moment, there haven't been any arrests and police are working to identify the victim and will, of course, support the family once they've worked out exactly who this 16-year-old boy is. But, of course, this is an enormous shock for the local area and it's very close to a local primary school that would have finished the day not long after this. So another dreadful incident of knife crime. Actually, he was shot. This young man was shot in the capital. Another young life taken.
Yeah. A really distressing story. As you said, the boy's identity not yet known. Police are working on that and appealing for information as well. Emma, thank you, Emma Birchley, across that developing story for us here on Sky News. Now, a court has heard how triple murderer Carl Clifford raped his ex-girlfriend before killing her in a violent sexual act of spite. The 26-year-old has already pleaded guilty to murdering Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah and their mother Carol in a crossbow and knife attack in their family home last year. But he denies the charge of rape. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt was at Cambridge Crown Court today.
The prosecutor told jurors they had one question to answer. Carl Clifford was a self-confessed killer, but was he, she said, also a rapist? Now, Clifford has admitted the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah and their mother, Carol Hunt, but he denies raping Louise after tying her up and before he shot her dead with a crossbow. Now, Clifford isn't sitting in this trial. He's decided not to be here, jurors have already been told. But today he claimed through his barrister that scientific evidence, that's his semen found allegedly on Louise Hunt's body, was the result of consensual sex. The two of them had had 16 days earlier and just before Louise dumped him from their relationship. The prosecutor, Alison Morgan, said this: the prosecution's case is that the defendant planned a terrible attack on Louise Hunt and her family, enraged by her rejection of him. That attack included an act of sexual violence committed out of spite when she was restrained and unable to escape from him. The prosecutor said that Clifford had spent 2 weeks planning the attack, and towards the end of this hearing, the jurors were shown CCTV footage of him in those days before the attack. Some showed him in Halford buying 2 petrol cans. The prosecutor said they were later found empty in the boot of his car. And more footage showed him buying lengths of blue rope. The prosecutor said this was 11 days before the attack, and he used it to make a makeshift noose, she said, but there was no genuine attempt to end his life. Now, during that planning, according to the prosecution, he also bought a knife and a crossbow from the internet. Then he tricked his way into the Hunt household. Now, jurors were also shown doorbell camera footage that, according to the prosecutor, on which she said they could hear the whooshing sound of the fatal crossbow bolts being fired. The prosecution case continues in the morning and is expected, the whole trial is expected to finish within the next few days.
There's a warning today. The backlog in the courtrooms of England and Wales is actively harming victims. Research by the Victims Commissioner found almost half of victims of alleged crimes have had their Crown Court trial dates rescheduled at least once. In response to the findings, the Ministry of Justice said it has increased the number of court sittings to their highest in a decade and will continue to do so until the justice system fully protects victims. Sky's Ashna Huranak reports.
On average, survivors of rape wait 710 days to get to the end of their trial. But imagine waiting a decade.
The victims are not supported in any way. You're at risk until they're put in jail. You're at risk until you come to trial.
Bella, whose name we've changed, reported her former partner to police in 2014. He was charged 8 years later with a catalogue of offences, including rape, sexual assault and coercive control. The trial eventually went ahead last year.
It really affected my mental health. It cost me many jobs because I couldn't go to work when decisions were being made with the police. It affected me in ways where I just couldn't cope. They changed the police officers who I had trust in. It affected me in so many ways.
What would you say to someone who is listening to how long it took your case to finally be resolved?
Don't give up. It nearly broke me a few times. My parents, my friends said to me, "It's going to kill you." But the impact it's having on you mentally, you need to not give up, because you will get justice.
The extent of that debilitating wait for justice in England and Wales has been exposed in new research by the Victims Commissioner. Almost half of those, like Bella, have had their Crown Court trial dates rescheduled at least once, with many only finding out it's been cancelled the morning of. The backlog in the Crown Courts stands at 73,105, but Sky News has recently revealed the number of outstanding cases is likely closer to 80,000. The Commissioner says for victims and survivors, it's unbearable.
They have been re-traumatised by the very system that they thought they would protect them. And to actually know the length of time it's actually taken to get a court trial, to have to turn to alcohol, to have to turn to drugs as a coping mechanism, says everything about a system that is failing. You know, some were also self-harming and also some were suicidal.
Bella's abuser was found guilty of actual bodily harm and coercive control. For years, her life was on hold, waiting for this outcome. Only now can she begin her recovery. But there are thousands of others still waiting. Ashna Huranak, Sky News.
And if you've been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans at any time. Their number is 116123, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. Farmers returned to central London today to continue their protests against planned changes to inheritance tax. It is the fourth time in as many months that demonstrators have flocked to Westminster. Sky's Dan Whitehead went down to find out why.
This is the fourth big protest that we've had since the budget last October. Farmers again coming back to London angry about that government idea, that policy to introduce a 20% inheritance tax on farms worth over £1 million. The farmers here say that that is going to put a lot of the small businesses and a lot of the farms out of business. Let's chat to the organiser of the protest today, Ollie Harrison. Hi, Ollie, a great turnout. There's certainly a good few thousand people working their way down from Trafalgar Square there. But this is the fourth protest. The government just still isn't backing down, is it?
They won't talk to us, and what today's about, it's about an amnesty. So there's so many farmers, older farmers, ill farmers, woke up on the 31st of October and their world, their lifetime's work was just taken away from them. And we want an amnesty for those people that haven't got 7 years to gift, which we keep being told we can do, to be able to gift in the next 12 months before this policy comes in, and then we can talk about getting the policy to the right level in the next 12 months. But there's a death hanging over people, wishing them not to be around. It's not right.
And this is this big issue that if they live 7 years, they'll be exempt from this inheritance tax. There's a lot of, we've spoken to farmers in their mid-80s, ill health, don't believe they're going to live another 7 years, and they're in this horrible predicament where if they die before April, they'll save their family potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds.
It's not about the money, it's the fact that they've worked all their life, and their grandparents have worked all their life to build a farm up that's barely resilient, all of them at the moment. But once you're going to lose 30-odd% of it, it's not sustainable. So you may as well sell the whole lot. And who's buying it? It's not going to be farmers. And this is the problem. And with what's going on in the world at the moment, we need food security. It's bonkers that they're not even realising this. An army marches on its stomach.
Well, this is the wider issue. It's not just about the inheritance tax, is it? Because if farmers have to sell off their land, that becomes other things, and it takes it out of the supply chain, right?
Exactly, yeah. You know, the margins in agriculture are 0.25% at the moment. No one's going to buy land to farm it. You know, and it's not a loophole that's being closed. You know, it was brought in for a reason, because farms were getting broken up, food sustainability was falling low, and that's why it was brought in. If they think there's a loophole for people that are tax dodging and buying land that aren't farmers, there's a way around that with the policy they've got, but with different numbers within it.
Is it the case now that you're not expecting the government, the mood music is slightly changing, and you're not expecting the government to scrap this inheritance tax change, but perhaps you just want that amnesty, you want the 7-year rule changing, you want the threshold perhaps up from £1 million to a higher level?
Well, that takes the human impact out of it if they do something in the next 12 months for that. And then while we've got 12 months and everyone's got a clear head, we can talk about a policy that will fix agriculture and make it better and won't destroy family farms.
Okay. Holly Harrison, the organiser of the protest, thanks so much for chatting to us. Government insists that it has support which is steadfast for the farmers. They say this policy will only affect the very wealthiest and the biggest of farms. These farmers here simply don't agree.
Dan Whitehead in central London earlier for us today here on Sky News. Still to come on the UK tonight, will Meghan's new Netflix show be a hit? We'll be chatting to a TV critic to find out.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakoulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news.
This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first.
Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
We're rolling. Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Meghan Markle's new lifestyle and cooking show has been released on Netflix. With Love Meghan features celebrity chefs and guests. But will it be a hit? It is the latest in a string of shows released by the Sussexes after they signed a $100 million deal with a streaming platform. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has been binge-watching.
Welcome to Meghan's new life. Well, sort of, because this isn't her house. But it is her latest project, a lifestyle programme, part of their deal with Netflix. Some would say cheesy and saccharine. It doesn't feel like she's got her eyes on a cynical British audience.
We're going to need boxes.
No, I think we should bring that back.
But with the help of her friends, it feels like a reset. A happier, more upbeat Meghan, talking about her childhood and her family life now. It is worlds apart from their last very personal documentary. But there are nods to the past few years.
I just think that it felt really symbolic of saying to anyone, if you've been through something, you're not broken. It can be fixed, it can be sealed and healed at the same time.
5 years ago this week, Harry and Meghan were carrying out their final official royal engagements before moving to Canada. It hasn't been easy. Meghan's American Riviera brand, the one with the jams, had trademark troubles, so instead she's launched As Ever. There's also been problems with podcasts and other TV programmes. But talent manager Jonathan Shalit says there is an international audience that still wants to hear more from them.
For her to talk publicly, for him to be executives in companies that want a royal association, he can get paid a lot of money, she can get paid a lot of money. So I think whatever their earning needs are, they can more than achieve that. Equally, if this show works, that's going to be a quicker way of achieving that. But I think this show will work. I've equally seen very positive reviews. If you Google some of the American press, they're very positive reviews.
Prince Harry only makes the briefest appearance on screen to support his wife.
This feels like a new chapter that I'm so excited that I get to share, and I've been able to learn from all of you. So just thank you for the love and support. And here we go, there's a business. All of that is just part of that creativity that I've missed so much.
With the subtle digs at the restrictions of royal life, it has given her this platform for a show that now financially has got to succeed. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Well, let's get the view, shall we, of TV critic and broadcaster Scott Bryan, who joins us now on the UK Tonight. Now, Scott, didn't have a chance to watch it when it dropped at 8 a.m. this morning. We're watching Sky News or Bluey in our household at that time of the day, so that's my excuse. But just looking through the papers' reviews, The Independent and Guardian, 1 out of 5 stars. The Telegraph, marginally better, 2 out of 5. How are you scoring it today?
I mean, I think overall, it's fine. I would say it's hardly revelatory. It's hardly going to change the TV medium. It's hardly going to be anything that will be kind of a must-see. I think it's aspirational. It's general lifestyle sort of tips in the tradition of maybe Martha Stewart, maybe The Barefoot Contessa, which is very much a daytime show. It feels very much like an expensive sort of daytime programme too, in terms of the tips that they give, you know, how to use bath salts, how to make a candle, how to do some sort of fine home entertaining, having a guest round at a moment's notice. Not really revelatory in terms of what gets said, as your report just said there. I mean, maybe lifting the lid a little about the difficulties of the last few years. But I mean, I would say that this is, I think, a show that is, you know, very much for the fans. It won't change anyone's mind about what you think of Meghan. I think the haters will still hate Meghan. Those who really like her and Harry's content will, I think, warm to it particularly. I think overall it is just another bit of lifestyle show, another bit of lifestyle formatting that has been a mainstay on TV for many years, even though, of course, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, there is an audience for it, isn't there? I mean, Meghan has an audience. She's got 2 million followers on Instagram, and she only recently, you know, came back to Instagram, so she's bound to garner more. And she does say in the programme, from the clips that I've seen, she said, look, she's going back to what she did before, but because before she met Prince Harry, and we know what happened next, she was an actress, but she actually ran a very successful lifestyle blog, of which this subject matter was very much at the heart of it.
Yes, that is certainly the case. And in the first episode, you know, she talks about that lifestyle website and how that was very much at the heart of what she used to do and how that continues on here. So I think it continues that tradition. I think a big question, I think generally, is kind of this feels like a show from a different age of streaming. I mean, about 5 years ago, when streaming services were really building and there was so much competition between all of these new entrants, such as Netflix, Amazon and Paramount and so forth, they would pay ludicrous amounts of money to new creators and those in Hollywood. So not just the Sussexes, also the Obamas. I mean, Ryan Murphy. You know, giving eye-watering, in my view, amount of money in terms of being able to have sort of projects that didn't necessarily have to have massive figures, but were very much a matter of prestige. I think these days, we're in very much a different environment in streaming. It's a lot tighter. It's all down to whether a show is immediately profitable in the long term and in the short term, and it can be quite ruthless. So I think generally it's going to be quite interesting to see where this show and also other sort of big Hollywood names, whether they're going to be renewing contracts, whether sort of viewing figures really matter for them, whether the fact that it's become such a big global talking point today with this new show, whether that is a key metric too. I think it'll be interesting to see in a different streaming age we're now living in, whether shows like these with big names like these still have a hold.
Yeah, because of course there was that £100 million Netflix deal, and like you said, those days have gone now. The scramble's gone. The content is there. They did the tell-all documentary, didn't they, Harry and Meghan? They did a docuseries about polo, and of course the Invictus Games, and now this. Where does it go next? Obviously, if that second series isn't commissioned, Meghan seems to have other irons in the fire. She's hinted at another podcast. Of course, there's a £20 million deal with Spotify that only garnered, a handful of episodes. I think Archetypes was the name of the podcast. And merchandise as well. We saw scrolling through a website of jams and sprinkly flowers that she seems to put on everything she makes in that programme. So it's almost like this is a platform. And nowadays, this second screening, which is only a term I've come across recently, where programmes are commissioned for people to watch while they're actually scrolling on their phone. Is this one of them?
I certainly think that there are merchandise opportunities, and that this is a way for Meghan to, enhance and extend her brand that she's already been able to build up for herself. And I think if you are a person like that, and the fact that you are able to cross into podcasting and also onto mediums like YouTube, which is growing all the time, particularly with younger viewers, I think that is certainly giving more opportunity. I think, though, with streamers, they want to have a return. They want to ensure that audiences are coming back for them. And I think a key question, really generally with a lot of creators is, you can sign these big deals, but in the long run, you have to really deliver the goods, whether that is viewing figures or whether that is a lot of interest about your new program. I think, if you're not having those sustainable viewing figures over a period of time, your contract's not going to get renewed. I think in Harry and Meghan's case, they are able to sort of now work with anyone they want to. I guess in the long term is whether it will be sustainable for decades, not just only for a few years.
Yeah, and I guess it'll be interesting to see how this is deemed a success or not, this series. And I guess, as you alluded to earlier, it's whether it gets that second series, maybe with £100 million deal. There'll have to be a second series to warrant that kind of cash. Scott, really good to hear from you. Thank you, Scott Bryan there, reflecting on Meghan Markle's new series on Netflix. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, researchers are predicting 3 out of 4 adults in the UK will be obese by 2050. We'll have the details for you. Hello, welcome back. Downing Street wants to stop green activists using a little-known international law to tie up major infrastructure projects in the courts. An obscure international agreement named after a city in Denmark is delaying some of the biggest industrial builds in the country at a huge cost to the taxpayer. Our deputy political editor Sam Coates has more.
This is who the Prime Minister has made the poster boy for NIMBYs and blockers. Attacked personally by the PM in a national newspaper for, he says, squandering tens of millions of taxpayers' money. Now, Andrew Boswell has stalled the development of a huge new gas power station here in Teesside for months with legal challenges. Developers say the plant will be net zero, but he's certain his cause is a just one.
People will be very surprised to hear that they're going to build a gas-fired power station here. They are going to put carbon capture and storage on it, but our analysis is that that actually is not a good solution environmentally.
You have lost every case to date. Can you understand why some people are frustrated at that?
The point is that we have laws in this country and we have a Climate Change Act, so we are holding the government to account.
This is just the latest case Mr. Boswell has brought, all made possible because of an international convention that means if he loses, it's the taxpayer who has to pick up almost all of the other side's legal costs, potentially millions of pounds.
What would happen if the costs that you had to pay weren't capped?
It would be very difficult for individual campaigners like myself and also the environmental groups and other groups who wish to go to court.
One area in this industrial zone is empty and quiet. This is where the new power station is meant to be. For now, a standstill.
This delay has already cost tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds. It could mean that the project doesn't go ahead at all.
This is the consequence of a system that caps the costs for people bringing challenges to projects like this. Can that continue?
It needs to be fundamental reform, and we need to stop these activists from being able to stop any sort of economic growth.
I understand the cost to developer of the delay amounts to £100 million every 3 months. Just one project of many being challenged around the country where the costs are capped and the taxpayer picks up the bill. Now, the government is promising change, but can it stomach the fight this would unleash? The legal firm representing Andrew Boswell is clear that the international convention is vital.
One of the laws they are going to be using a lot, pretty much universally, is something called the Artists' Convention, which is extremely important to every claimant who's bringing an environmental case in this country.
Can you just give me a sense of the scale of projects that are being challenged?
We're talking about 80 cases a year presently being brought on environmental issues in the High Court, and that doesn't sound like very many, but they are actually mostly very important projects of huge significance.
Inside Downing Street, they label the practice lawfare, a derogatory term meaning the strategic use of the legal system to damage an opponent. And I understand they want to stop taxpayers from subsidising it.
The very simple point is if those projects were made lawfully, if the decisions were lawful behind them, there would be no issue. There would be no challenge, the challenge would fail, and the money would not be paid.
It's empty sites like this where work is on hold for endless court cases that really gets the Prime Minister exercised, I'm told. But disarming the activists he calls blockers may mean breaking an international treaty. Is he really willing to have that fight? Sam Coates, Sky News, Teesside.
More than 3 in 4 adults in the UK are predicted to be overweight or obese by 2050. That's according to a new study by The Lancet, which says the proportion of obese children and adults will rise substantially over the next 25 years. Researchers also predicting more than 50% of the world's adults will be overweight. They say that these figures reflect an epidemic of obesity, which is a profound tragedy and monumental societal failure. Well, let's get more on this. GP and former medical director of primary care for NHS England, Dr. Nikita Kanani, joins me now. Good to see you, Doctor. I mean, this is an alarming read. A rise of 121% in obesity amongst children and younger people, and adults as well. You know, what's happening here?
Well, look, this has been going on for quite a while. I think one of the things that the article talks about is the proportions by 2050. But actually, since 1990, the numbers of adults who are overweight or obese has risen from 730 million to over 2 billion in 2021. This has been happening for a few decades, and so therefore we're seeing this future trend looking at 2050 with 50% of adults and 750 million children and young people. But this is complex. It would be really easy to say that this is about the individual, but we've talked before about weight loss drugs and, a weight gain sort of society and environment. And that's exactly what's going on. There's very many factors that are playing into this that are causing many, many young people and adults to be overweight.
Yeah, so many factors, but it does feel like, Nikki, we've been talking about this for so long. It feels like we've never had more awareness, never had more education, never had more calls to action about obesity in the UK. But the research shows that this is, a global problem. It talks about the fact that, in terms of raw numbers by 2050, 627 million people in China will be obese. In India, 450 million. So it's not just isolated to the UK, is it? But like I said, we talk about it so much more. We know what to do to stop it. Why is none of it landing?
I think it's because, as you described so rightly, it is really complex. So if we just take a step back and look around the world, over half of the world's overweight adults reside in 8 countries: China, India, the US, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Indonesia, and Egypt. And as you said, and we've talked about before, the health implications are really pressing. So increased obesity links to increased diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, earlier onset of these conditions, and a huge pressure on healthcare systems as well. So what the article and the research talks about is urgent policy reforms. And as you said, things that I think we've talked about before, but it's never been more clear that, we need to have really directed, concerted effort in these areas, regulation of ultra-processed foods and sugars, access to affordable and healthy foods, and national investment in prevention and physical activity, because otherwise this trend is not going to reverse, even with the advent of the weight loss injections that we talked about quite a bit in 2024.
Yeah, I was going to say the authors of this study do acknowledge that it doesn't take into the account the impact of these new weight loss medications and the impact they might have. They might play a significant role in the future, they say. But, it's early days when it comes to that. But we've spoken about these weight loss injections before. And can they be seen as a big part of the cure of this? Or, it's hard to know. It's being seen as a good thing, but is it in the long term? For so many people, millions of people, they can't all go on weight loss drugs.
So I think it is a really good option for people who can afford to go on it. The reality is most people in this country and around the world will pay to go on these medications. And once they're on them, and we've talked about this, it's...
Yeah, but the kids can't go on it, can they? That's the problem, isn't it? They live with it their entire life and then they become an adult and then go on them. They've had an unhealthy life up to that point.
So you're spot on.
Potentially.
Injections as a kind of magic solution or band-aid is not the answer. It's definitely an option. It works really well for a proportion of people who can afford it, who can sustain it. But without wider societal kind of initiatives, we're going to have children who just won't be able to live or access a healthy environment.
OK, Nikki, really good to talk to you about this. Dr Nikita Kanani there, former Medical Director of Primary Care for NHS England and NHS Improvement, reacting to those alarming warnings about obesity. Thank you. Coming up on the UK tonight, we're going to meet the 3-year-old who is so obsessed with golf, it was the very first word he ever spoke, and he's rather good with the club as well. There he is. And action from the Champions League to come. Aston Villa and Arsenal both playing their round of 16 ties this evening. We'll have the updates for you.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his 3rd term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some
emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. He paid over $50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Mai Tai village on the front line.
Firing to civilians and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change. These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate. In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones. Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
It's a Premier League weekend on NBC and Peacock. March 8, top four hopefuls, Aston Villa. Visit Brentford. Then March 9th, it's a blockbuster battle. Arsenal.
That's not it. Just what Arsenal needed.
Visit bitter rivals, Manchester United. The Premier League weekend is on NBC and streaming on Peacock.
I want to take note of that, Tim.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that, actually, yeah.
I think we're back on air now. Are we back on air? Yeah, we are back on air. Sorry, I thought I was talking in an ad break there. So we'll go again. Basically, I'm going to talk to a 3-year-old who's golf obsessed. His name is Wilson Norris.
Yeah.
You need to write that down because you're going to be interviewing.
Remember the amazing footage of Tiger Woods as a little kid on TV in America, yeah?
It's not too dissimilar.
Oh, wow.
We're going to bring you that in just a minute, so stick around for that interview. But first of all, we're going to talk about Liverpool. We've had an update on their boss, Arne Slot.
Yes.
And you're going to have to explain this story without getting us both taken off air.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a literal rendition of what's been said, but Arne Slot is the Liverpool manager who you may remember was very upset after the final ever Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. Everton scored a 98th minute equaliser, much to their delight, but Arne Slot's frustration came on the pitch, was confrontational, has been handed a 2-game touchline ban and a £70,000 fine. But the FA has released what was said to Michael Oliver and his team of match officials by Arne Slot. They say he was confrontational and aggressive. He said he hoped the ref was proud of the performance. Again, I'll take some swear words out of this that were peppered, peppered allegedly throughout it. If we don't win the league, I'll blame you, and roundly called people a disgrace. Now, Arne Slot has disputed one thing and said that he actually said, I'll come back and thank you for winning the league, and says there wasn't a swear word from his perspective. But there was another case which he didn't challenge the swear word. So the Football Association has maintained that despite Slot's language, it didn't make a material difference, even if what he alleges was true. So the sanction stands.
OK, so what does it mean for him, really? And, you know, that aside, things are actually going really well for his side, despite all of that circus.
Well, the one touchline ban he's had so far was against Newcastle at Anfield. Liverpool won 2-0, pretty comfortable with him sat out in the stands. And then after that, they've got Southampton at Anfield on Saturday. Southampton marooned at the bottom of the table, so you expect they'll go pretty well. And he will be on the touchline tomorrow night in the last 16 Champions League tie at Paris, where they could get one foot in the last 8 of the Champions League. OK, so things going well for Liverpool. Yeah. And sort of OK for Arne Slot. Well, yeah, I mean, the first year in charge. Jurgen Klopp could win the title, 13 points clear, Carabao Cup final in 10 days' time or so, and potentially the Champions League could be a 7th Champions League.
Words. We'll forgive him.
He's OK. Plenty of passion, but Arne Slot, then the sanction stands for him. Meanwhile, Arsenal with 1 foot in the Champions League quarter-finals. Update you on the games now.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
When he came back to Tottenham as an Arsenal player, the crowd were unbelievably abusive towards him.
It was very intense. You could cut the atmosphere. You could just feel it was different.
Sol Campbell comes out to face the music, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that this North London derby revolved around just one man.
Back then, there was no support. People were just allowed to just carry on in a disgraceful way.
Sol is a sensitive human being, so obviously he felt it, but he didn't show it.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, traditionally, golf might not seem like a young person's game, but my next guest tonight is certainly looking to change that. He is 3-year-old, that's right, 3-year-old Wilson Norris. Here he is. He is obsessed with the sport, according to his family, going to the driving range at least 4 times a week. There he is under the floodlights to hit as many balls as possible. He's becoming a familiar face at courses near his home, but it is not just a hobby, with his parents also using golf to help him learn. Well, I'm glad to say that Wilson has stayed up late for us tonight and is accompanied by his mum and dad, Becca and Luke. Hello to you all.
Hello.
Hello. How are you all?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Oh, well, Wilson, it's good to see you. You're very good at golf. Mum and Dad, I have to ask, where did this love of golf come from?
So Wilson found a golf ball in the house. Luke likes golf. He was about 6 months old, found one, took it to bed, and the rest is history, basically. He's loved golf ever since.
Not put it down since he picked it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it golf from the moment he wakes up?
All day, every day. Sometimes in the middle of the night, he'll wake up and say, "Mummy, I go play golf." And I have to say, the driving range is closed, but we will go in the morning.
We've all been there, but, you know, normally it's the kids wanting to go to soft play and having to explain that is closed.
I'm so glad it's not soft play.
Yeah, actually, that's where the rest of us parents are going wrong. We're going to soft play. We should be going to the driving range. But, Luke, you know, this isn't just a love. You've described Wilson as being obsessed. So what are we talking about here? Obviously, waking up in the middle of the night. But look at this practice. Just look at this swing, everyone. That is incredible. I'm, over the age of 40 now, and I've been practicing my swing for quite a while, and I've not got anywhere near that.
Yeah, I mean, he's just obsessed with it. He wants to do it all the time. He even tries to make it harder on himself by putting his legs apart or doing it off his knees sometimes. Like, you see there, his legs are open, so he's just making it more difficult. But he loves it. He'll do it all day long. I think the most he's hit in one day is about 400 golf balls. He just kept saying, "More daddy, more daddy, more daddy," when the balls ran out. So he just... and obviously he's got a knack for it because I can't teach him anything yet. He's kind of too young to even understand what I'm trying to say, but he just watches and he does.
Oh, come on, Luke. He's probably teaching you a thing or two. I understand.
Definitely, yeah. Stop paying for lessons from him.
I understand that he's even putting peas on his dinner plate with a fork, and golf was even his first word.
Yeah. Well, actually, off the record, ham was his first word. Then he didn't say that for a long time, and then golf took over. So
yeah. But yeah, anything you can use to use a golf club or a golf ball, chips,
hairbrush.
Anything.
We found him using hairbrush. We were at a family friend's pool party one day, and he had the pool cleaning stick out, trying to hit just anything that's stick-like. If he can find a ball, he'll hit it with it.
Oh, Wilson, I know it's late for you, but this is going to be the price you're going to have to pay when you're an international golf star doing these big interviews on TV at unsociable hours when you've had a full day playing golf. What is the plan? Is there a plan? Because he's so young, but then you do hear about these sporting prodigies. I mean, Tiger Woods mentioned, of course, in terms of golf. Rory McIlroy didn't exactly start too late as well. I know, Wilson, my question's quite boring. I'll let your mum and dad talk. What is the plan for Wilson? Where can this go?
Well, as soon as he's able to kind of take instruction to better his skill, then we're ready for it. But I don't think he would listen to anyone right now.
There's definitely no rush. I mean, we just want to make sure he keeps having fun, he keeps wanting to play golf. And then hopefully if he does that, he'll want to get better eventually, and then we can help him go down that road when he wants to.
Oh, yeah. Listen, as long as he's enjoying it. Becca and Luke, thank you very much. Wilson, we'll let you go to bed. You've got to get your sleep up if you're back out on the driving range tomorrow. Wilson Norris there. We'll remember the name. Thank you for joining us.
Say bye.
Bye. Oh, bless him. The price of fame, eh? Staying up late. Sweet dreams, Wilson. Sweet dreams of golf. Right, let's have a look at the weather, shall we, if you're out playing around tomorrow?
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the next couple of days are going to be mostly settled, although the north will be wet and windy at times. Largely dry for the rest of this evening. Northwestern parts of both Scotland and Ireland, wet and windy with coastal gales. More of the north, seeing rain tonight. Locally heavy, but the mild northeast of Scotland will be dry. Further south, clear skies will bring another widespread frost with freezing fog patches forming there. That fog lifting tomorrow morning to leave plenty of sunshine for England and Wales. The south and the east of Ireland and northeast of Scotland looking fine too.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
That's all from us tonight. The UK Tonight is back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it is The World with Anna Botting.